What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham, Jason Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the November 20th, 2023 edition of Raw Talk, hosted as always by Megan Morant and Matt Kemp in the studio. They open up the episode talking about the women's brawl from earlier on in the show that they'll get to a little bit later on. Pretty much by starting out replaying the Miz and Gunther segment from the show, hyping up the Intercontinental Championship match for the pay-per-view coming up on Saturday. Really good stuff from Miz and Gunther there, I thought. One of the better parts of the show on Monday, which was an overall good show, I thought. We hear from Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci backstage. Now, they replay the Miz and Gunther segment, but don't really talk about Giovanni Vinci kind of costing Ludwig Kaiser the win against Johnny Gargano elsewhere on the show. But Ludwig Kaiser says backstage he calls Miz a clown and that he has no chance against Gunther at the pay-per-view. He tells Vinci to shut up. He also says that Gunther will know what to do against The Miz at Survivor Series. And then when asked about the Tag Team Turmoil match coming up next week on Raw by Byron Saxton, they argue. So I guess we're getting a Tag Team Turmoil match next week. I knew that we were getting the women's tag team title match. I'm not sure. They may have announced that during Raw, but I had seen that somewhere. They're doing that next week in Ivar versus Bronson Reed. I know that was announced during Raw. I don't know if they announced the Tag Team Turmoil match during Raw, though, so they do make that official here. That will be happening next week on Raw to crown a new number one contenders to the tag team titles. So back in the studio, they hype up Gunther versus Miz for the Intercontinental Championship. Matt Camp does mention that if Miz wins, he will tie the record for most amount of Intercontinental Championship reigns with 9. Does not say who currently holds the record, that being AEW star Chris Jericho. Not surprised they don't mention him by name. They didn't mention him by name on Raw either, but again, I'm not shocked. He's kind of dead to them until he comes back to the company at some point. That's just how WWE operates. They recap the women's tag team fatal 4-way match to crown number one contenders to the women's tag team titles next week on Raw. That was won by Tegan Nox and Natalya. Natalya says that they beat 3 teams, and that's an impressive feat. Tegan Nox says that she was the first woman to beat Piper Niven last week on Raw in 8 months. If they mentioned that on commentary, I must have missed it. That was the first time Piper Niven has apparently been beat. Maybe not even in tag team or singles or whatever. Not even just been beat, but pinned in 8 months. If that's true, that's a great stat, but you would never know because they never really talk about how protected Piper Niven has been up to this point. But anyway, Natalya praises their chemistry of herself and Tegan Nox, and they vow to win the tag team titles next week on Raw. They hype up the women's tag team title match for next week on Raw in the studio. They also recap the women's brawl with the women's War Games combatants. The SmackDown superstars, including Becky Lynch, they invaded Raw this week, and they brawled to close out that segment following Raquel Rodriguez versus... And I'm sorry, it was after the Becky Lynch and Xia Li match during the show last night. And they also encourage fans to cast their vote for the Women's War Games Advantage. So I haven't really had a chance to talk about this, but this is just so fucking dumb. So with the men, they had a men's advantage match to determine who was getting the advantage in the War Games match, obviously won by Drew McIntyre last night on Raw. The Women's War Games Advantage for the first time ever, because they've had Women's War Games Advantage matches dating back to NXT and on the main roster, I think even last year. So this year, they're having it determined via a fan vote for a fucking Ripples promotion, the potato chip company. I love Ripples. I love potato chips. I just thought that was so stupid, though. Why do the women have to have their match determined via a fan vote and not the men? Just do it for both. I know it's better to have one advantage match as opposed to none, but still, I mean, I think that's pretty dumb and not really all that fair, but anyway, they kind of promote that here. We'll hear from Zoe Stark backstage ahead of her Women's World Championship match with Rhea Ripley at Survivor Series. Zoe Stark says that Rhea Ripley did not lock the clubhouse door, and that was how she was able to get into the Judgment Day clubhouse during Raw last night. She also tells Jackie Redmond that Rhea Ripley is worried about everyone else but her, and then it's going to be a hard-hitting match on Saturday, and that Ripley has a big challenge ahead of her, and Stark will win if her mind is elsewhere. If Rhea Ripley's mind is elsewhere, as it has been as of late. That's what she says here in the interview. Back in the studio to close it out, they hype up Rhea and Stark for the Women's World Championship. Matt Camp says that Rhea has the advantage and that she's been in the spotlight, but Stark is impressive. She had a great run in NXT, he says. And if Rhea remains preoccupied with other endeavors, then her championship might be in jeopardy. They recap the main event with Drew McIntyre beating Jey Uso, and then Cody Rhodes announcing afterward that it'll be Randy Orton. He doesn't mention him by name, but Randy Orton, as we all expected, will be teaming with them in the men's War Games matchup against Judgment Day and Drew McIntyre. Again, never mentioning him by name. They don't even mention him by name, I don't think, here on Raw Talk. The funny thing is, why not? Because the crowd chanted his name. They made it extremely obvious that it will be Randy Orton. And then I'm thinking, will WWE just play dumb and then continue to advertise a mystery partner for Team Cody, but they're not. I went on social media after Raw, and there's a fucking graphic if you go to WWE.com, there's a graphic, and it says right there in the headline, Cody Rhodes chooses Randy Orton as partner in War Games, or whatever it said. So they played dumb here on Raw Talk, probably because they didn't get the memo that they're supposed to say him by name, but they made it pretty obvious it will be Randy Orton inside War Games. They hype up said War Games matchup before plugging X-Pac for the bump. So no final card rundown, not really necessary. They already plugged the entire card except for Santos and Carlito, which they didn't need to because that's a SmackDown match. Maybe they'll run down the card on the pay-per-view, or rather the pre-pay-per-view SmackDown Lowdown on Saturday. It's not really necessary. I don't really care when they do or don't, just because we get enough of a card rundown and pay-per-view preview on the shows as it is. So, decent episode here of Raw Talk. We got to hear from Zoe Stark, Imperium's Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci, as well as Tegan Nox and Natalya. Pretty solid stuff, hyping up Survivor Series for Saturday and Raw next week. Thank you guys for checking out my review of Raw Talk for this week. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Have an awesome one. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.